Hi everybody, I'll be talking about what a legally binding contract is. A legally binding contract needs formation in order for it to be binding. We need an offer, an acceptance, and consideration. Those are the three things we need in order to have a fully formed enforceable contract. However, there could be critical defenses that could either enforce that contract, which has those three things, or we have defenses that could actually get someone out of a contract and not make it legally enforceable against that person. So I'll be talking about offer, acceptance, and consideration, along with three pretty simple defenses. There are over 10 defenses. However, I just don't want to overwhelm. And also I don't want to make the video last for a very, very long time because there are so many defenses. So one more thing I want to mention is that under a contract, there could be two biblical laws. It could be the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC, which is the sale of goods, which means that, hey, we go out and buy a video game from GameStop, or we buy furniture from Home Furniture. That is an example of a contract being under the UCC because those are sale of goods. And goods are basically all tangible and movable chattels at the past or present time of the contract. So the present time of the contract is us buying the video game. The present time of the contract is us buying the couch from the home store. That is an example of that contract having goods and being under the UCC. Moreover, we have common law that could be under the contract. Okay, it's either a situation, UCC or the common law. And the common law is a deal of services. An example, I go to the mechanic to say, hey man, fix my car. That is under the common law. I say, hey, fix my laptop. I need some help. I go to GameStop and they fix my laptop. That is under the common law because they are performing a service for me. Okay, so let's get into what an offer, acceptance, and consideration really is, and those three nifty defenses that I talked about. Let's get into it. So an offer means an outward manifestation of present contractual intent with definite and certain terms communicated to the offeree. An example is I offer to sell my buddy Kevin my car. I give him the outward manifestation piece of it. I say, hey buddy, hey Kevin, you want to buy my car for $5,000? That is an example of me giving him an outward manifestation with present contractual intent because I want to form a contract with them. That's the outward manifestation piece of it. And I have definite and certain terms within what I said. Hey, Kevin, you want to buy my truck for $1,000, $5,000, whatever the case is. And I communicated that statement to Kevin. That is an example of what an offer is. What's tricky about what an offer can constitute to be is this element, the definite and certain terms piece of it. Because we need what we call Q-tips. Q-tips is a mnemonic. And no, not the Q-tips you use to dig the dirt out of your ears. The mnemonic Q-tips. We have Q-T-I-P-S. That's a mnemonic for Q, which is quantity. In my case with Kevin, that would be the truck. T, which stands for time. Let's say that on February 5th, I go to Kevin and I say, hey buddy, you want to buy my truck for $5,000? That is the time piece of it, February 5th. And we go to the identity. I stands for the identity of the parties, which is Sammy, Kevin. Thumbs up. We have the identity of the parties. We need price, which is the $5,000 for my truck. I said, hey Kevin, you want my car for $5,000. That is where the price piece of it comes in in the definite and certain terms element of what an offer is. Lastly, we need a subject matter, which is pretty self-explanatory. The subject matter between Kevin and I is Sam selling him the truck. That is the subject matter of what's going on. Okay? So for example, let's say that I tell him, hey Kevin, I want to sell you my car. What do you think, buddy? He says, yeah, I'll take it. Technically speaking, that's not an offer because I did not mention this piece of it. I didn't mention a price. There isn't a price there. If I say, hey Kevin, you want my car for $5,000, that will satisfy Q-tips. But if I don't have any of these things in there, or you also say quantity, if I don't have my truck in there, then the quantity piece of the definite certain terms are not in there, and that technically doesn't constitute an offer. So therefore, if I try to sue Kevin for breach of contract, he could say, hey Sam, dude, you didn't mention quantity in our contract. Or earlier this how I said, you didn't mention price. You didn't mention the price of the car. So therefore, you didn't make an offer, and this contract is not enforceable. It's an example. So that's basically what an offer is. And I want to add one more thing to what an offer is that think about the advertisements you see on Facebook, the newspaper, or Craigslist. Those advertisements are technically not offers. Although they may have Q-tips, it is not technically an offer. Advertisements technically are invitations for negotiations. Okay? Basically, you're trying to bargain with that person. Or you might take their firm price, whichever situation may be. But remember, you can't simply sue someone for an advertisement. You just can't do that because that's technically not what an offer is. An offer technically does have Q-tips. However, like I said, with invitations are basically advertisements. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's get into acceptance. Acceptance is an unequivocal assent to the terms of the offer. Okay? Let's say that my buddy Kevin agrees to the offer that my buddy Israel says to him by saying, hey Kevin, do you want to buy some cocaine? And Kevin says, sure, buddy. And he has this piece of it, right? The assent to Israel's offer that has Q-tips. And that technically can constitute an acceptance. It could be a text message saying, yes, I accept. It could be a verbal acceptance saying, yes, Israel, I accept to buy your cocaine for $1,000. Okay? That is an example of Kevin making an acceptance. Let's go down to consideration. This is pretty simple, but consideration can get tricky. Consideration is a bargain made in exchange for a legal detriment. A legal detriment is, I guess the example of Israel and Kevin is giving up a legal detriment by giving Israel $1,000. And Israel is giving up a legal detriment by giving him cocaine. Even my situation with Kevin, I give him my truck. That technically is a legal detriment. And Kevin giving me the money, the $5,000, is his legal detriment back to me, right? That's why it's a bargain made in exchange. That's pretty critical to think about, okay? One more example that can make consideration slightly tricky, not really, but a little bit, is basically when, let's say an example is this. Let's say my buddy Dennis from Amplify says, Sam, I will give you $1,000 to not drink. That's technically a legal detriment in our contract. It's being an offer. Up here we talked about that. I accept Dennis's offer, and the legal detriment piece of it is me giving up drinking. Okay, or better yet, to keep this more clean, he tells me, Sam, you can't work out, you can't go to the gym for 1 month, and then I'll give you $1,000. I have the legal right to go to the gym if I want to. However, because of our contract, that is a legal detriment that I'm giving up in exchange for Dennis's money. Okay? If he just says, hey Sam, I'll give you $1,000, doing a great job, man, gives me a pat in the back. And I give up my internship because I don't need that. I have money now. I'll be fine. That is technically not a legal detriment that I gave up. You could argue that, hey, Sam gave a legal detriment because he quit his internship. However, I did that after we made our offer and acceptance. And plus, it's more of a gift promise. We call it a gratuitous promise. He basically gave me a gift. I didn't have to give up a legal detriment. I didn't have to quit my internship. That was basically something that I did of my free will. Okay? So those are examples of what an offer, an acceptance, and a consideration is, because you need all three in order to have a fully formed and a fully enforceable contract. Okay? So let's get into defenses. We have 3 simple defenses. As I said, there are over 10 defenses. But for the sake of time, and for the sake of keeping this in layman's terms, I don't want to let this video last for a very, 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 very long time, even though I could. I love this stuff. But let's get into, I know maybe you can't see it, but I wrote it over here. We have duress, statute of frauds, and we have illegality. Let's talk about illegality because that's the easiest one. Let's get to the easiest and the toughest. So illegality is basically when A and B create a contract that's fully formed. We have offer, acceptance, and consideration. However, their contract is illegal. Okay? An example is what I said before, is that my friend Kevin, how crazed out that guy is, he makes the acceptance and say, hey, Israel, I'll buy your cocaine. We'll do it. And what if? This is what if, but what if Israel backs out on the deal and doesn't give Kevin cocaine? Kevin could technically enforce that contract. However, he can't do it under the court of law because technically cocaine is illegal, right? I think we all know that. I hope we do. Hope we do. So because the contract is technically under an illegal substance, right? Kevin cannot enforce that contract. Israel can just simply tell him that, hey man, that technically was illegal what we were doing. Although we have a fully formed, legally binding contract, you cannot enforce that contract onto me because what we did was illegal. So illegal acts illegal conversations, with deals, can technically be fully formed contracts. However, because it's illegal, can't be enforceable. So let's get to the statute of frauds. The statute of frauds is very simple. I'm going to put SOF, or statute of frauds. SOF. Okay? This basically means that A has a writing from B, and he's trying to enforce that contract. Okay, there needs to be a writing against whom enforcement is sought. A writing against whom enforcement is sought. Okay? So the left side and the right side have mnemonics. And they're very critical to think about because these can help you understand what the statute of frauds technically is as a defense to either enforce the contract or to get out of the contract in case the other person who's trying to enforce the contract brings it up. Okay? So on the left side, this is what keeps it in. This is what enforces the statute of frauds. Okay, the left side is Mr. Dog. We have marriage, real property, debt of another, 1 year, contracts over 1 year, 12 months or more. And lastly, goods that are $500 or more. Okay? The right side, which takes it out of the statute of frauds as a rebuttal defense against the statute of frauds, is should poop more frequently religiously. Mr. Dog should poop more frequently religiously. Remember, this side takes it out. That is the defense against what enforces it. Mr. Doggy keeps it in. Okay? So I'm going to talk about the most common things about what keeps it in and technically what keeps it out. So let's talk about real property, 1 year, and lastly, goods. So in Mr. Dog, we are going to go through R, O, and G. So R, remember what I said, R stands for real property, okay? That A and B made the decision to say, hey, I'm going to sell you my house, sell you, let's say, this tract of land that has crops on it. That is technically real property. And the plaintiff, A, has a written contract, because it has to be in writing. In order for you to sell a house, in order for you to sell a tract of land, in order to do anything in real property here, we need a writing, which technically is what statute of frauds is, because you need a writing in the first place in order to even raise the defense, okay? So let's continue. On real property, you need a signature from the person you're trying to enforce the contract of, okay? Example, let's say that I'm trying to sell my house to my friend Matt, and we have the offer, we have the consideration, we have all that jazz completed. He signed it, it's a deal. But let's say last second, let's say after he signs it, he has cold feet. He says, Sam, no, I don't want to do it anymore. It's technically too late, because he not only agreed to the contract, he signed it. And that is under the defense of real property under the statute of frauds. Therefore, I could take Matt to court and tell the judge as evidence that, hey, I have this writing from Matt under this real property contract, and which is under common law, that, hey, he agreed to this, he signed it, and therefore under my defense of the statute of frauds, he has to be bound to it. That is an example of real property. Okay, let's get into 1 year. So a contract that requires 12 months or more, that's why it's called 1 year, 12 months or more is technically something that needs to be in writing. Okay, it has to be a signature. Okay, example, let's say that my buddy Israel wants to use me as his coach. We make a deal under the common law for services to say, hey, Sam, you are going to teach me how to work out and eat healthy foods. I want to change my life, right? Let's say Israel does that, and our deal technically lasts not February 2021, but February 2022. Let's say it lasts 2 full years, a 24-month cycle of us training together, right? Because it's over 12 months, there must be a signature by Israel in order for me to enforce the statute of frauds. Okay, that is what the 1 year piece of it stands for. Okay, if it's under 12 months, then if I try to raise the 1 year piece of it under the statute of frauds, it's not going to work. They'll look at me and say, like, do you understand the law, dude? You know, it takes 12 months. It takes more than 12 months. Even 12 months in 1 day, that's when I can raise this as long as Israel signed it. But if it's exactly 12 months, I can't raise the statute of frauds. I just can't, because that's not how it works, the 1 year rule, okay? So let's get into goods. Goods is a situation where it's either $500 or more. So let's say I want to sell my car to Riley. I say, hey man, I want to sell you my car for $1,000. We have the offer, the acceptance, and the consideration. And $1,000 is the total price of my car. Because it's $500 or more, if Riley voluntarily signs the contract, I can raise this as evidence and say, hey man, not only do we make a contract, a fully formed contract with offer, acceptance, and consideration, I also have your signature as proof of you agreeing to this contract, and you basically saying that, look, you're going to buy my truck for $1,000, which is $500 or more. Okay, even if it's $500. Let's say I'm done to sell my car for $500, right? It's already done to sell for $1,000, but whatever. Technically, I can still raise this $500 or more. Okay? That is what keeps statute of frauds in. That's what keeps it enforceable. Okay? So let's talk about the things that keep the statute of frauds out. Okay? Remember, Mr. Dog keeps it in. Should poop more frequently, religiously. That's what keeps it out. Okay? So let's talk about the most common. So let's get into partial performance, sufficient memorandum. Okay, those are just the most common. So we get into the sufficient memorandum. Well, let's say I make the deal with Riley, right? Example is that Riley let's say this happened. I sent him a sufficient memorandum about the whole contract, and he happened to not sign it. Let's say he didn't do it. Okay, he could use a sufficient memorandum from me to say that, look, Sam sent me a sufficient memorandum about this whole car deal. And this is a thing that I can use as evidence to show that, yeah, we had this deal. However, I can use this signed, or as he signed, this signed sufficient memorandum from Sam that this thing is just not going to happen. It's kind of confusing, but if you're looking at a contract's fact pattern exam, or even in real life, someone can use it as a defense to get out of the statute of frauds. Every state has different types of statute of frauds. This is under the common law. So it depends on your state. All right. So lastly, let's talk about partial performance here. Partial performance is a situation where the other party did sign, however, they partially performed, and the other party, the opposing party, did not actually go through with the contract. Example, I want to sell Riley my car for $1,000. Okay, Riley gives me $1,000, but I don't give him my car. That's an example of Riley partially performing and giving me the money. However, I don't give him the car because I don't want to be in the contract anymore. I say, Riley, man, I'm done. I technically gave you too good of a deal, man. I want to go somewhere else, sell my car. Riley would be like, hey, man, no way. I partially performed. Okay, we have a signed contract, we have offer, acceptance and consideration of a fully formed, legally binding contract, and hey, I did my part by partially performing by giving you my money for your truck. Therefore, I partially performed. Okay, so lastly, let's get into the other pretty simple defense, which is duress. So, duress is exactly how it sounds. All right, so the defense for duress is that the defendant made an improper threat to the plaintiff. That improper threat has induced the plaintiff, that party, to consent to a contract that is technically against his or her own free will. Example, let's say that my buddy Emily gets a gun or a knife and threatens our buddy Cyan and says that, hey, Cyan, you better sign this contract or I'm going to shoot. And the contract, let's make this up. Let's say the contract is about her life savings. That if Cyan doesn't sign that contract, not only will she get her brains blown out by Emily, but she's going to lose her life savings. But because she's under that improper threat by the other party, which is the other party is Emily, it induced Cyan to consent against her own free will. Because obviously when you make a contract with anyone, it has to be your free will decision at the moment of the contract, right? You can't just have someone have a gun to your head or a baseball bat or a knife and say you better sign this. That's under duress. So that's an example of where Cyan can go to court and say that this is not an enforceable contract. She put me under duress. She had a gun to my head. That was my free will decision to use to sign that contract and get her my life savings. That's an example of her being under duress. It induced her to make that decision. So those are three simple defenses: duress, statute of frauds, and lastly, illegality. And we need offer, acceptance, and consideration in order to have a fully formed contract that can be enforceable by law. Okay? And remember, advertisements you see on Facebook or eBay, that technically is invitations of negotiations. And lastly, I want to say this last piece of it is that under the common law is the deal of services, taking your car to the mechanic. The UCC is the truck example that I used with Kevin and giving him my truck for $5,000. That will be under the UCC. And of course, the UCC and the common law are totally different things, and they have a lot of different laws that could be upheld in terms of defenses. So I hope you have a decent understanding of what a fully formed contract is and exactly what these three defenses can do in order to get out of the enforceable contract that is there. Okay?